So, if you're an RF professional, you know that interference is just part of the daily grind. But what happens when that interference isn't an accident? What if it's deliberate? Well, today we're diving into the world of radio jamming, how to spot it, how to hunt it down, and exactly what to do about it. We're going to walk through a fantastic tutorial designed to turn RF pros into real-deal signal detectives. Now, this whole explainer is based on a really comprehensive 20-part tutorial from the specialists over at RFI Detectives. This isn't some lightweight guide. We're talking about a professional-grade resource, and it's built for technicians who are out there in the field. Okay, let's get one thing straight right off the bat. The tutorial makes this crystal clear. This information is for educational and mitigation purposes only. The point here is not to teach you how to jam signals, but how to find and stop illegal jamming. Operating this kind of equipment is against the law in most places, and, believe me, the penalties can be severe. This is all about giving technicians the tools they need to identify, locate, and report these illegal signals. It's about defense, not offense. So, how exactly do you go from just suspecting a jammer to actually proving it? We're going to follow the tutorial's really logical path. First, we'll get into the basic physics of jamming. Then, we'll take a look at the most common targets you're likely to run into. From there, we'll explore some advanced countermeasures. And finally, we'll get you set up with a practical field guide for when you're on the job. All right, let's kick things off at the very beginning with the foundations of jamming. Because you can't fight what you don't understand, right? This is where the tutorial builds that absolutely essential core knowledge. So the first couple of chapters really lay the groundwork. Chapter 1 digs right into the physics. You know, how a jamming signal can totally overpower a legitimate one by just destroying the signal-to-noise ratio. Then Chapter 2 gets super specific, pointing out the most common targets, everything from critical GPS frequencies to those crowded bands our everyday gadgets live on. And the tutorial provides this perfectly clear definition. See, jamming isn't just random noise. It's the deliberate transmission of energy to mess with a specific system. That word, deliberate, that's the real game changer. For any RF tech, your first job is figuring out if you're dealing with an accident or a truly malicious act. Okay, so once you get the what, the next logical question is where. And that brings us to the most common targets. This is where all that theory gets real, because these are the systems you'll most likely get called out to investigate in the wild. The tutorial is incredibly thorough here. I mean, it gives whole chapters to each of these threats. It covers everything from those simple key fob jammers that thieves use to stop your car from locking, all the way to sophisticated GPS jamming that can bring logistics to a halt. It even covers targeted attacks on Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, drones, and RFID systems, and each one has its own unique signature that a technician has to learn to recognize. So at this point, you know what jamming is and what it targets. This is where the tutorial shifts gears and gets into some really advanced concepts. We're moving away from just identifying the problem and toward actively building a solid defense against it. Yeah, this section is where the real strategy comes into play. It gets into countermeasures like frequency hopping, but then it goes deeper into electronic countermeasures, or ECCM, which is basically this constant cat and mouse game of signal defense. The tutorial breaks down real-world case studies, looks at what's coming next, like AI-driven jamming, and draws a really critical line between military and civilian jamming tactics. And this slide right here nails that distinction. Military jamming is all about strategy and overwhelming power, denying an enemy communications over a huge area. Civilian jamming, that's usually more about opportunity. Think a low-power device used to disrupt a very specific local target, like a single car's GPS. As a technician, knowing which one you're probably up against is a huge help in narrowing down the source. Okay, so after all the theory and all the strategy, the tutorial brings it all down to earth with the final section, the Technician's Field Guide. This is where the rubber really meets the road. These last few chapters are pure, actionable intelligence. It's not theory anymore. It's a practical, hands-on guide. Chapter 18 walks you through choosing the right gear, from spectrum analyzers to direction-finding antennas. Chapter 19 shows you how to set up a proactive monitoring program so you can spot problems before they turn into crises. And it all comes together in Chapter 20 with a step-by-step protocol for exactly what to do when you get that call. And here it is, the core of that final chapter. A simple, clear, 4-step protocol. First, you assess the incident. Get all the details. Second, you grab your gear and collect data to analyze the signal. Third, you use your direction-finding techniques to pinpoint the source. And finally, and this is critical, you report it to the regulatory bodies and preserve the evidence. It's a complete, professional workflow from start to finish. This quote from the tutorial's conclusion really captures the whole philosophy here. Each chapter intentionally builds on the one before it. It's designed to transform the 20-part series from just a collection of facts into a single, comprehensive operational reference that you can actually use. So, that really brings us to the final question. We live in a world where the radio spectrum is more crowded, more noisy, and more contested than it has ever been. This tutorial gives you the tools you need. The only question left is, are you prepared to be the signal detective?